How could that love from the dwarves, the prince, and a whole worldwide audience turn into hate? Well, Disney found a way. This morning, I ate an apple that I got from the grocery store because the local creepy old lady in the woods was out of apples, and I took a bite. And in that moment, I thought to myself, this must be what Snow White felt like, when she ate that poison one. And as I took another bite, I thought about what it is like for Snow White to be the first Disney princess, but in our modern age to be both loved and hated. Well, like Rachel Zegler's bob haircut, I imagine it's pretty complicated. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was released in 1937 and was the first feature-length animated film that Disney Studios created. Many also credited it as the first ever animated feature film, but there was stuff happening in other parts of the world too. Typical Americans. But trust me, it was huge. This project was so ambitious that many believed that Disney wasn't going to be able to truly pull it off. The only cartoons that were created during this time were shorts, because animation took so dang long to do, and it took an intricate level of skill to pull off successfully. In the news, they even ridiculed Disney in calling the project Disney's folly, stating that even if the studio was able to finish the film, it would not be very notable. But could you blame them for thinking this? He was also the one who made Alice's Wonderland in 1923, which was, well, it was something. Well, Disney proved them wrong because audiences were mesmerized, and it wasn't just because of Dopey's bald head. Nothing like this had ever been done before. They fell in love with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Not so much the prince because he was barely there, and not the evil queen because, ugh. But it's hard to tell if we truly love Snow White or more of what she continues to represent for both the entertainment industry and animation history, because she's the predecessor of all Disney princesses, but is she truly the fairest of them all?
I'm Snow White, bringing you up to the second coverage of Who's the Fairest of Them All.
I'm Snow White. Who are you kidding? She's definitely had work done.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs story actually begins
many eons ago.
Well, no, actually it's with these guys in 1812. The Grimm brothers popularized the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs as a German fairy tale. How men with the last name Grimm got into the fairy tale business is beyond me. The original story is much like the one we all know and love, minus one key element: true love's kiss. And this is significant because in many ways, true love, or the idea of true love, has become a calling card for Disney, particularly among their princess films. I mean, they practically trademarked it at this point: true love's kiss, available to buy at a Walmart near you. Yeah, in the original, it's a lot less romantic. The prince trips while carrying Snow White's casket, and Snow White hacks up the piece of apple. But in a classy way. And many of you may not know this, or maybe you do. Nerds. But way before the Disney animated film, there were countless live action films that were being made. The earliest recorded film being in 1916 and a silent film. There was also a Broadway play established in 1917, which was the first time the Seven Dwarfs were given names: Snick, Glick, Blick, Flick, Plick, Wick, and Q. Okay, yeah, they were really going with something there, but I like the Disney rebrand better. So this tells us that Snow White was a little bit popular, and I would say this may be largely because the character of Snow White really emphasized innocence, beauty, and purity, which were all elements very much prescribed to women during this time, especially young women.
And so pretty that I hardly can believe I'm real.
You see where I'm going here, don't you? Don't worry, you will. Okay, that establishes the live action connection, but what brings Snow White to animation? Well, that's where Betty Boop comes in. Betty Boop was a character created by Max Fleischer in 1930, making her debut in a cartoon short called Dizzy Dishes. One of the key elements that differentiated Betty Boop was not only her iconic design, I mean, look at those legs, but also the fact that she was a musical character based on the Flappers during the 1920s.
I'll do my number first.
But you may be asking, what the heck does she have to do with Snow White? And to that I say, a lot, actually. In 1933, Fleischer Studios released Betty Boop's Snow White, which was based on the original fairy tale. Note, this was 4 years before Disney would release its feature-length film. Coincidence? Well, no. This was definitely a new angle for Snow White. While Betty Boop was just a cartoon, she was also largely recognized as a sex symbol in the same way that actors like Marilyn Monroe was. So, having her play Snow White added something that wasn't quite there before. A certain passion and desirability.
There may be something there that wasn't there before.
Betty Boop's Snow White was a profound part of animation history, even being saved in the U.S. National Archive due to its collaboration with jazz singer Cade Calloway and his cover of the St. James Infirmary Blues, sung via the character Coco the Clown.
She will search this wide world over.
I love Betty Boop's Snow White, but I still get chills when watching it. Ugh. This was a huge moment for Betty Boop and was so successful that they would then go on to make Poor Cinderella with Betty Boop as Cinderella in 1934. Everyone was watching this happen, and you know who else was watching? Disney. And this surprised me when I found out, but Betty Boop was a huge inspiration for the character development of Snow White at Disney Studios, down to both the looks and the voice. They even had the same animator, Grim Natwick, worked on Betty Boop's shorts before joining Disney to work on Snow White. And you can see it in the round eyes, the face shape, and even the mischievous but innocent expressions. But wait, there's more. What Disney was attempting with Snow White was so different than anything they've done before, and they were revolutionaries in so many ways, like many animators at that time, with their silly symphonies using music and their short Flowers and Trees being their first animation in color. But for their first feature-length film, they needed a fleshed-out human character that would wow audiences. So Disney sent all of its animators back to school to really study motion and anatomy. Yeah, so class, you can pass your homework to the front. Yeah, this ain't gonna cut it no more. But they would study things in extreme detail, even how pants moved. And this is where we get Goddess of Spring, which is a short loosely based on the mythology of Persephone and her kidnapping by Hades to the underworld. And you can see that she was the initial Snow White and that they used her to test out how they would animate a human woman. And yeah, she's a little wiggly, but this helped the animators eventually move to something that really worked, and these two projects are only 3 years apart. When it finally came down to animate Snow White, Disney had a good path forward. The human side of Snow White was assigned to 2 women. Marge Champion, who was the live-action actress and dancer that helped with capturing Snow White's movements, and Adriana Castellati, who was the voice. Both women allowed animators to fully flesh out Snow White, so much so that she felt real. But one thing that has to be mentioned, this film would not have been successful without the 7 Dwarfs, because Snow White on her own is a boring character. There, I said it. And look, it's unfortunate, but true. Does Snow White have a hard life? Definitely. She's orphaned and in the care of her evil stepmother who hates her. We definitely haven't seen that before. But she herself is most often content. The only thing she's worried about is finding true love. She has no other ambition, which again is fine because that's why we have the 7 Dwarfs. Audiences at the time were just used to short form animation, so Disney knew that they would need to pack this movie with jokes and gags, and the 7 Dwarfs were the perfect vessel. So much of Snow White's best moments are when she's interacting with the 7 Dwarfs. This is where we see her true personality. So, am I saying she only is good in relation to little men? Well, yeah. It's Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. You need both. And with the 7 Dwarfs, we see 7 ways to fall in love with Snow White. So, how could that love from the dwarves, the prince, and a whole worldwide audience turn into hate? Well, Disney found a way.
See that pretty girl in that mirror there? Who can that attractive girl be?
Now I've painted a full picture of Snow White's character and how she was developed, so now we can take a look at what might have gone wrong. When I first took notice that Disney was making a live action Snow White, I first cringed inwardly, and then it actually brought to mind something else. Now there have been countless of Snow White adaptations that have explored the character in various ways, but a few years ago there were several videos going around of the evil queen and Snow White from the Disney parks.
What did you love most about each other? Oh, that's so difficult. I mean, just look at her.
I mean, she's my mother. We do all love our mothers.
Stepmother. Oh, yeah.
Stepmother.
Yeah. That's right. Emphasis on the step.
Family is family, though.
Yes. Sure.
And watching this, I actually thought this might have been a good blueprint on how to approach a Snow White movie. You know, a little lighthearted and fun. But when they cast Rachel Zegler, I knew they were going for something else. And you can only truly see it when you watch West Side Story in her role as Maria. It's fun to compare the character of Maria to Snow White because there's a little similarities there. It's also just fun to say Maria, Maria, Maria. Both are naive when it comes to love, and they also showcase an example of a shift in womanhood and how love for women can be a trigger to transform from adolescence to full adulthood. This could have worked, but for some reason they completely shifted the character from the operatic voice that Rachel could have easily pulled off and bubbly persona that fit Snow White perfectly to something a lot more, well, forced. It comes off very inorganic, but that's not on Snow White. There was nothing here as an actor that could have been done. At least we didn't get emo princess.
When Disney decided to capitalize on the emo movement, I happened.
They were priming Snow White to be something that audiences would love again, but the story, writing, and song composition just did not meet the talent that Rachel Zegler could have offered. And once I did a deep dive, I kind of just became more and more impressed by her. Like, speaking of Alice in Wonderland, I went down a rabbit hole on this one, and I saw the vision.
Dying to cry your heart out. No chance, no way, I won't say it no.
I love that song. This girl is impressive, and she has the makings of a Disney princess, if that wasn't obvious. But is she the Snow White? I mean, I would have literally made a new movie for her. Snow White is not quite what I would have chosen for her to do. It's way too tame of a part. And this Bob, I can't defend this Bob. That is a crime against humanity there. It reminds me of that new version of Dora the Explorer. It's just wrong.
We had a heck of a time getting enough money to finish Snow White. 6 months later, we were sitting with all of our debts paid off with at least a couple $1 million in the bank. With the profits of Snow White, I built a studio.
Ferdinand, Mickey Mouse, and all the others is going to get this beautiful statue. Isn't it bright and shiny?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Aren't you proud of it, Mr. Disney?
Well, I'm so proud, I think I'll bust. You know, I think that Mickey...
I really invite you to take a deeper look at things before you resort to hate, or even love for that matter. There's so much beneath the surface. I mean, that's one of the key messages of Snow White aims to tell. True kindness and beauty is within and not based on outward appearance. And I'm sure you all that are watching this are beautiful people that have the ability to choose kindness. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you're just all rotten.
They say I'm trouble.
Something to think about. But that's all I have for you. What do you think of Snow White, and did the 2025 live action remake change how you felt about the character? Leave a comment to let me know what you think. Like and subscribe if you like what you saw, and I will see you next time. Bye! Just whistle while you work, do 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 do, and cheerfully together we can tidy up the place. So hum a merry tune, do 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 do. It won't take long when there's a song to help you set the pace. And as you sweep the room, imagine that the broom is someone that you love, and soon you'll find you're dancing to the tune. Do 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 do. When hearts are high, the time will fly. So whistle while you work. So whistle while you work.